Right, so my name's Arnold. Thanks, Alistair, for the intro. In fact, not just a friend of Catapult for a few years, but many years. It's coming on to 7 years now. Collectively, we did some maths, which is shocking in the investment world the other day, but I think it's sitting just over 600 million so far that we've helped direct, indirect, and public and private finance in that time through SMEs via the Catapult network. We're sitting on 495 SMEs that I've met personally that's spending at least an hour per company, so I don't know where most of my life has gone, but I'd argue that maybe there. And also private investor, we've got 38 companies in our family office portfolio. I carry 11, and I'd like to say that 4 of those in the past 2 years have come directly from the Catapult network. So there's definitely something happening within this kind of space, which is wonderful to see. I'm with Duran and Yusuf, but I don't want to do their intros. We've got both sides of the investment table here. We've got Catapult's investment relationship manager, Yusuf, and we've got Duran, GP at Atlas Ventures. But over to yourself, Duran, just to maybe just give you a quick intro.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yeah. So Atlas Ventures is an industrial tech fund. We invest in early stages. We're tech agnostic and very sector specific. So we focus on domains like energy, manufacturing, transportation, including logistics and heavy industries. Having said that, most of our investments have been in industrial AI and robotic automation, and we're also in the process of making 2 more investments in these domains, so hence why I'm on this panel.
Cool, thank you, Duran. You've let the cat out of the bag there talking about AI, but Yusuf, over to yourself.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Yusuf Chadun. I'm the SME Investor Relations Manager at the Connected Place Catapult. And I have the fun job of getting to work with our SMEs in our various programs and helping them convene and introduce and meet investors and VCs like Duran. So when our organisations are ready to take on equity investment between a pre-seed, seed, early Series A, that's when I get involved.
Cool, thanks guys. Right, I would like to start by saying that anybody here who doesn't know that AI is here to stay, those questions can be left right to the very end, but I would also like to just start that it's very much here to stay. And there are different flavors of it, and I'd like to think that even before I was born, AI played a role within lots of things like the space race and medical fields, and we're seeing a lot more of it now. So despite it being a heavy trend within investments, Duran, a question for you around your portfolio and the sort of role of AI and generative AI. Just touch on that for a moment.
Sure. I mean, let me give a few examples of what we've invested into, paint a picture. We're investors in AI Build, which use AI for optimizing 3D printing processes in industrial manufacturing. We're investors in Octopipe, which is a federated machine learning company for industrial IoT, again used in infrastructure, manufacturing, etc. I think when we're thinking about AI, we should also definitely think about robotics, actually. Obviously, with the cost of robots coming down, computational advancements, again, supply chains being in place, acceptance improving in the society for robots, etc. That's, again, a big theme, and we've got 2 companies in the space. One is being used for packing fruits in pack houses, really. So, and now generative AI is coming, obviously. Historically, especially in transportation, AI has been used for autonomy, safety, compliance monitoring type of use cases. But with generative AI, I think new use cases are opening up. We're in the process of investing in a company which uses generative AI for customer experience. It's a remote diagnostics, virtual technician type of solution. I think there's going to be a lot of use cases in entertainment. We've seen a lot of use cases in design as well. So definitely, I share your sentiment. I think it's here to stay. But yeah, the question is how we manage and how we get to live with AI.
Well, just whilst I've got you on a roll here, because I can see Yusuf nodding, but Duran, this data play that's been created with AI, sort of supplemented with the application of Gen AI, it's pretty disruptive for the OEMs. The opportunities within that and also the exit opportunities, just talk around that for me if you can.
Sure. It is disruptive, but I think the automotive, I'm referring to the automotive OEMs right now. I think the OEMs, the tier ones, etc., are here to stay. And my observation is they're actually embracing all these technologies. Some people have argued, the likes of Tesla emerged, etc., but a lot of that has been on the back of the EV transition. It's not AI disrupting OEMs. As far as I can observe, everyone's investing in the space. They're trying to incorporate them into their vehicles within the safety standards, of course. And the way we at least see them is more like partners and potential eventual exit opportunities as opposed to sort of like competitors.
Yeah, got it. So disruption breeds that complementary, if not displacement theory, right?
Yeah.
Cool. Yusuf, not just yourself, but also the wider role of Catapult. Talk to me about that role you play within this ecosystem, because you've been there and done that. You've built funds, you've invested yourself. Talk to me about that role for the investor relations wider community as well with CPC.
Yeah, sure. So typically the sectors that we're working in at Catapult are very complex sectors. They've got large incumbents. It can be very difficult to get into those supply chains. So when there's a really exciting, innovative SME with a new technology or a new solution, and they want to sell into the rail network or they want to sell into aviation, it can be difficult for them, not just from getting into that supply chain, but then persuading investors to invest in a company that's then going to ultimately be part of a supply chain in an aircraft or in a train. It's a big ask. So one of the great things we do at Catapult is we run, for example, these test beds. So we have live test beds. We've got one at Bristol Temple Meads train station where we're testing out in a live train station SME solutions, therefore we're helping de-risk. We're also we are going to be announcing the winners of our Glasgow Airport testbed over the next few weeks. We've also had, for example, a HS2 accelerator where we're getting small SMEs with really novel, exciting technologies to be part of these really big supply chains. So they're using their solutions for real. We can actually see the outcomes, we can see the impact, and that's helping de-risk.
Nice. And you've also got different stages, right? So different sort of horses for horses or horses for courses, whichever one it is. So talk to me about all those different programs and possibly touch on the AI factor as well that CPC's got, which I know you've got a whole list of in your book.
Yeah, we've got quite a few. So, for example, in the most recent TRIG, so TRIG's one of our largest innovation funding programs. TRIG 2023, the winners of that are going to be announced, I believe, tomorrow. But one of the challenges was specifically connectivity, AI, and digital twins. So there's a commitment from DFT. DFT recognise that it's an area of growth. It's an area they want to learn more about, they want to encourage, they want to support. So we've got a whole challenge around that. The Connected Airport Living Lab, the first challenges are around digital twins. And obviously a lot of digital twin technology is AI based. I mentioned the Station Innovation Zone. And then there's really exciting SMEs that we've worked with over a number of years. For example, there's one in the room, Vivacity. They developed a really interesting system that uses sensors, which then looks at traffic flow, and it can help local authorities and planners optimise road and transport links. So they're the types of, some of the sorts of programs that we're doing.
Cool. Thank you, guys. So, Duran, one back for your portfolio. So the impact beyond just the return on investment. So obviously it's a stage process. Are the companies you want to invest in at the right stage? That staging process within AI, how do you do your due diligence on that? And also, what are you looking for beyond just the return on investment in this space?
Let me start with the first one. I mean, obviously, due diligence can be tricky in early stages, but we tend to invest in post-product companies that have early traction. So, of course, there's the technical due diligence aspect of it, but at the end of the day, actually being able to speak to the customers and hearing from them that the technology is working is the strongest form of due diligence, in fact. So I think that's quite important for us. And also one of the things that we try to do as investors, and maybe in some ways similar to Catapult, is we try to activate our industrial networks that we built around our funds. And it's much easier for us to turn to our friends at, let's say, VW, Porsche, etc., if a company is already working with JLR. as opposed to something in the idea stage. So that's why we try to go slightly, still early stage, but slightly later than pre-seed stage.
Cool.
Impact-wise, frankly, I mean, we do approach things from a very financial perspective. So we don't look for impact necessarily. Having said that, one thing we noticed is a lot of people are obviously very much focused on decarbonization and climate type of impact, but people tend to underestimate the efficiency gains that these kinds of technologies bring to all the sectors that they touch upon, that we focus on: manufacturing, transportation, etc. And those efficiency gains can actually be just as impactful as fundamental carbon capture or energy type of technologies. I'll give you one example. We haven't invested in them, but yet maybe, I don't know. There's a company we spoke to which uses AI for optimizing steel rolling process. What tends to happen there is apparently they keep the steels too hot because it's much easier to roll them, but obviously you're spending a lot of energy, and you can optimize that with AI. And even improving that process by 2-3% has a huge impact on carbon emissions. So there's a lot of indirect benefits in terms of impact that we're seeing, and yeah, I think maybe some of these are overlooked by a lot of climate investors.
No, it's very true. And I guess from a fund's perspective, I think this is also a reflection of your portfolio and your thesis and how you work around that. I think there's a change in a lot of these more nimble VCs that can take this approach. It's a lot of hard work. You were talking about that kind of OEM network as well. That's a lot more than when I was a founder, what VCs would potentially do for you if you could become a portfolio. So, Yusuf, some stuff that I've seen with you, which is fascinating within AI, Recycli, for example, that have come through our cohorts within waste management. Do you want to talk about some other sort of, I don't want to call it a de-risking factor, but I like to think that Catapult does a hell of a lot of de-risking at the earlier stages, or like the previous panel said, focusing on the stuff that otherwise you wouldn't have capital for because you're so lean as a startup. You come to the Catapult and try stuff out. We're seeing a lot of AI in that space, right? So there is a de-risking factor there. I don't want to make that just the role of Catapult, but it's a huge bit. Talk to me a little bit about that experience that you've had in seeing these companies go through and where they're at right now, right?
Yeah, sure. So in terms of de-risking, when we work with an SME and a venture on one of our programs, they go through a stage of application. At different stages, there will be an assessment on their organisation, on their products, on their solution. So from the early stages of working with an SME, we're beginning to really understand, how their technology works. We then work with them to, and actually for many of the SMEs that we work with, while we give them some grant funding, for example, to help them develop their projects, many of them find that actually there's a huge amount of value when we connect them with, for example, policymakers at the DFT, or we get them into a supply chain at one of the organisations, or one of the corporate companies we work with. So there's a huge amount of value there in terms of those connections that we can make, and in terms of bringing them into these supply chains. We've got some. For example, just thinking of another couple of organisations, when we look at organisations, for example, that are providing solutions to Heathrow Airport. So they're providing solutions to Heathrow around better utilisation and better management of runways, therefore increasing optimisation, increasing efficiency. Port of Dover have recently been doing a feasibility study on an AI-driven digital twin. But they're also using that not just to understand their port operation at the moment and how they can make their port more efficient, but they're also using this digital twin model to look at how the future ships, the ships of the future are going to be much larger, quite possibly, but they're looking at the dynamics around how future vessels and how future interactions would work within that port environment. So de-risking, helping de-risk now, but also thinking about the operating models in the future and some of the potential risks and how that might de-risk in the future as well.
Excellent. Do you want a quick check on time? We've got 5 minutes, right? Excellent. I'd like the room to ask any questions. Arguably some of the most talented people I've ever met on stage, but don't take my word for it. Yes, sir.
Yes, just recapping from what you just said. My name is Luciano, I'm a researcher. Yusuf, you were just saying that different type of innovators or organizations require different types of help, let's say. Is there any data that Catapult has on the effectiveness of the different types of incentives, and if that data is available? So does it exist? Do you recollect? And if that's available?
Sure. So if I understand the question, it's around the effectiveness of the different types of services that we provide in terms of how effective they are with the growth of those. Yeah. So for the programs that we run, we typically provide, we carry out monitoring and evaluations. So we will find out where an SME is before they start the program, during a program, and after a program. And then for a period of time, we'll also track their progress afterwards. And, for example, at events like this, when we get to meet our SMEs again, we might think that part of the program may not have been of a huge amount of value, but they might come back to us and say, well, actually, that was really, really valuable. That one connection you made, that one connection that the Catapult assisted with, that enabled us to progress so many more steps down the road. So we do keep that information, we do track and report back on it. It's different for SMEs, it's different for different SMEs. But it very much is around, I think for the early stage ones, it is around helping them connect with those larger organisations that they wouldn't normally be able to connect with, to be able to hear directly from policymakers what is driving their policies and strategies.
And I feel like I want to add as well, if you want proof in that pudding, 4 of my portfolio companies have come directly from these programs, and Duran, you've got a drone business as well that was past cohort, right?
Yeah,
that's it.
Previous Catapult.
That's program. It. Hey, Louisa.
Question for Duran. Look, AI technologies are no longer taking 10 years to develop and integrate. So how do you get comfortable from an investor perspective on the moat that's being built and that there isn't, challenge coming straight behind in 6 months?
Yeah, good question. I think there's definitely some of those risks prevalent in investing in some of these technologies that are developing and changing very rapidly. One thing that I was recently thinking about and talking to Arnold about is a lot of investors also focus on these foundational AI models, which require significant amounts of funding and therefore perceived as more defensible. And that's one strategy. But I think there's also an element of, therefore, overlooking some of these AI-based business models that are easier to commercialize and that can actually become sticky businesses by building on top of what's out there already. And what I mean by that is sometimes, I talk to my investor friends and they'll dismiss a business because it's a ChatGPT wrapper. And fine, it's not necessarily a foundational model, it's using something else, but it's building tangible value in the market. And in fact, again, like this remote diagnostics business that we're investing in right now, they use a ChatGPT wrapper as a customer experience tool. And it's not a fundamental AI model. The data is being collected thanks to this sort of like a ChatGPT wrapper, which allows them to go to market rapidly. And once they build enough data in the background, and once they build relationships with the insurance companies where they get historical data, and OEMs where they get access to live data, then the defensibility comes up. And I think maybe this is something that many investors are overlooking, in my opinion.
Thank you. Rashish Joshi from Alexander Ross, Chartered Accountants, Tax Advisors. Some really fantastic stuff there, brilliant to understand. Question for Duran. What gives you that aha moment for an investment, and what does it then look like from an equity giveaway perspective?
And the second part of your question?
And so what gives you that aha moment, and what does it look like from an equity perspective for you as Atlas Ventures?
Yeah, I think it's important to say, well, we tend to think that every investment opportunity has its own dynamics, and therefore there are all very different from each other.
Say what you really think, Duran. Yeah.
No, honestly. So what? I mean, just to really quickly answer that. I mean, what tends to get us excited, based on our own strategy, of course, is when we see companies that are getting some very interesting traction with blue chip names at an early stage. That gives us a lot of substance to follow this company further. And then it immediately gets us thinking, oh, could we connect these guys with our networks in the automotive space or construction space and this and that. So I think that's a very strong hook for us at an early stage. In terms of equity ownership, most funds tend to go for somewhere between 5 to 20% at this early stage. But I think one argument is if the team is strong, if they're having good traction, you know, it doesn't always need to be 10-15% of the business. Just get involved and you reap the benefits later on.
Cool. If you have any more questions, we'll be milling around for the event till late. I'll be here. You'll find me at a local pub later on this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.